Hey guys, it's Priya here. Before I get started, like, subscribe, and share my channel. I'm excited to be here with you today. And for those of you who are catching me for the first time, my name is Priya. I am a coach. I'm a mindset coach, intuitive healer, and I work with women, primarily 40 plus, kind of going through the PMP, perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, and who are just really done with doing the things that they've doing life the way they've done it their whole life and are really looking to shift and start living the second part of their lives in the way that they want to. So I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, I want to talk to you about burnout. You know, we hear about burnout in workplace, being burned out from a job, but you can be burned out on life. And I want to just share my story and how I knew I was burned out. A lot of times we are just going through life through the motions. I've talked about this on other episodes where, you become an adult, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, and you go through the motions, not realizing that this is wearing on you. I hit major burnout. So I am a speech pathologist. First, let me rewind a bit. I'm a speech pathologist, and I got licensed in 2002 and was working with children in schools. First started in New York City, and the working in a school, if you resonate with this as a speech pathologist, is the place where you pretty much have set yourself up for burnout. There are so many children. I went from a private school after grad school with 10 children on my caseload to a New York City public school in Harlem. And it was an elementary school, and I had 60 children on my caseload, 60 children that I needed to see every week. I stayed with that school for close to 5 years, and then I changed states, and still worked in an education system and still had that huge caseload. The burnout probably started at the beginning of my career, and I didn't know that. I stayed with it. Throughout because one, I had gone to Teachers College, Columbia University. You can only imagine how expensive an Ivy League school is, even for 2 years. So I thought, well, I've committed this time to this education. I spent all this money. I have to stay in this. I was getting nudges. And as I talk about this more, I was getting nudges from early on in my career that, oh my God, I don't know how long I can do this. And I stuck with it for almost 20 years. So around, and then I was getting into, it's not just work. Burnout can happen in any area of our life. It can happen in relationships. It can just happen in your daily life. If you are in a marriage, and I've had these conversations with friends who are married and have kids, that you're just kind of in this autopilot mode. You go to work, you come home, you cook, you're caring for the children, you're caring for everybody in the house, you're making sure things get done. And as women, we have this special superpower that we get shit done. It is our thing. It's just we get stuff done. It took me years to understand that men and women are different. I was expecting partners to do things in a different way or find urgency in the same way that I did with certain things. And that wasn't happening. But it's also just the difference between men and women. It is a thing. Burnout can show up in your life slowly, progressively, and then one day, boom, you hit it. And it can also just slap you in the face. If I think back to my burnout, like I said, this was happening. It was predominant in my career, had a ripple effect into relationships. And around 2018, now I'm almost 20 years into my career, I started to feel resentment about going to work. At this time, I had switched from a school system and I started working for myself. But speech therapy was still a shortage area. And at one point I thought, wow, this is great. There's not a lot of us. I get all the work. And then around 2018, I was thinking, oh my gosh, I can't do this by myself anymore. I need help. And I did ask for help, but I didn't receive it. just because there wasn't anybody at the time to support me in that position. But I moved to New Mexico, and if I live in a county called McKinley County, it's the size of Connecticut. Sometimes you're driving 2 hours just to get to one house. It's so expansive. It's so beautiful. But yes, you can burn out with that. And I was doing it. And I found that I was going to homes and people were telling me about their concerns about their children because I was working in early intervention, birth to 3. And in my head, I was thinking, they're telling me about where their child is struggling or what their concerns are. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't care. Don't worry, they're going to talk. That was the first sign of burnout, that I stopped caring. I still kept going because I thought I had to. I didn't know what other options I had. I'd gone to school, and maybe some of you can identify with this. You go and you spend all this time and money on something and you think you need to stick with it for the rest of your life. And in my previous episode, I talk about choices. We do have a choice. It's just we think that we can't leave because of the importance that we've placed on this investment, the money, etc. Back to the speech. So I, had so many kids on my caseload. And then I decided I was going to take a week off. How exciting, right? I'm going to take a week off and I'm going to stay home and I'm just going to do the things that I want to do. At the time, I was with a partner. He was older and he was actually in the process of retiring. So here I am moving into burnout, and here's this person talking about kicking back and starting to enjoy life. And it was starting to build up a lot of resentment in me because I started to think, wait, I want to live like that, but why do I have to wait 25 years to be like that? Let's go back to that week off. So I'm excited. I'm not seeing any kids this week. It was the worst week ever. I didn't know how to be quiet. I didn't know how to just be in my house and sit or enjoy myself. It's now I have a dog, and if I had that time, I go out, I take her for a walk. At that time, it was like, what do I do with myself? Who am I without being a speech therapist? Who am I without this job? Then there's the external validation. I love my parents to pieces, but I would talk to my dad, and his question would be, how many kids did you see today? And if I said, 3, I'd get, If I said 6 or 7, good. So the validation that I was receiving externally was based on my productivity. Now that's a huge part of American society, is your productivity. Like, how productive are you? If you're just sitting and actually enjoying being quiet for a couple of hours before you start your day, you're not productive enough. You're not a good worker. So here that was getting reinforced. And I made it through that week, couldn't wait to go back to work because I just didn't know how to not be productive and how to just be with myself. That was 2018. I still kept going because I thought I needed to keep going. And in 2019, I just found myself an emotional mess all the time. Of course, situations were appearing in my life, especially with this relationship, that were making me emotional. And I had no tools in handling it, but I just kept plowing along. I just kept going. Energizer bunny, right? And then on August of 2019, I went on a trip. It was not a big deal. I was going from New Mexico to Phoenix, which is only 5 hours away. And the temperature, yes, it was going to be warmer, but I was definitely, drinking water the whole way. I don't know what happened. I still don't know what happened, but I woke up in the middle. I kept waking up throughout the night, feeling like I had a stomach ache, feeling like I was going to be sick. I didn't know what was going on. Next thing I know, I was in the bathroom and I had passed out and hit the side of the bathtub. Right here, right on my frontal lobe. And I had a nice lemon for a long time, nice black eye. Forget the physical effects, the cognitive effects lasted even more. And this was I talked about burnout can hit you progressively, or it could be a slap in the face. This was my slap in the face that Priya, you got to slow the F down. Like, you're not listening to yourself. And now, whether you want to call it that my soul was crying out to me, which I do believe, I do soul work, I do spiritual work, and the just the nature of how I was living my life was burning me out. It was a combination of things. So burnout can appear in our lives. We just have to listen to it. Now, at the same time that I was burning out from this job and my career and how I was working, I was burning out from the relationship. How many of you can relate to this? You're off, you're working hard, you're getting stuff done at work, and then you come home and then you have to get stuff done at home. I was coming home from work, being exhausted and burned out, and then I had to take care of stuff at home, plan dinners. I had to maybe clean up a little bit of something that was left from the day before. And that was creating burnout. That was creating burnout and resentment. And then just burnout from what I was doing in my daily life and how I was spending it. Now, I should say that this coincided with COVID. So, I had the head injury in 2019, and in 2020 we have COVID and we have to stay home. Guess what we had to do? We had to be with ourselves. And I was actually excited that I didn't have to go into work. And it was the year that I decided I wasn't going to do speech anymore. I had another business and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to be the administrator for that business, going to take a break. Yes, COVID was a hard time for everyone. And the head injury was the thing that allowed me to slow down and really take a pause in my life and reflect, where was I burned out? I was burned out across all areas of life. I was burned out on money and trying to figure out, how am I going to make, yes, I made a salary and I was paying my bills. How am I going to make any more than this? I was burned out on the career. I could not do speech therapy anymore. The thought of it just exhausted me. I was burned out on my relationship and constantly being the doer, the overgiver. As a woman, we're often just giving. We're just giving and giving and giving. And we go through life giving. Now, whether I'm single or whether you're a person who's married and with children, you're the giver. A lot of women are in this role where they go to work, they're the professionals, and they come home and they still have to give and give and give. And they don't get too much in return. Now, there are some women, of course, that, come home and then they're supported and they are given stuff in return. They're able to receive. But I'm talking to the people who are like me, that were just saying, this is too much. I can't do this anymore. The burnout was coinciding with one of the PMP, perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. Now, this is a whole other topic that I'm going to be having a podcast about called the M-Files, where we talk about menopause. We go into it. People don't talk about this too much, and the changes that happen in your body. They talk about, you can have, hormone replacement therapy, and everything is going to be great. My burnout was coinciding with perimenopause. So in the same time that these things are changing in my life and my external circumstances, my body was physically changing and it was uncomfortable. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't have people around me to share with me like what I might be going through. And then just even within my family, it was never really talked about. So I didn't have that support either. But I found that I was a raging bull. I was a ticking time bomb because I was burned out from keeping quiet my whole life. I was burned out from being the yes person and just doing things to go with the flow and not create ripples or not create any tension. Burned out. And I can't say that word enough on here because I want you to give yourself, if you're catching this video, I want you to give yourself permission to step back for a second and say, hey, am I burned out? Because it is possible. And when you keep plowing through, when you keep pushing through, even though your body and your mind and your soul are telling you, hey, you're burned out, you need to change, I don't want you guys to get a head injury. I mean, luckily, I did not die from it. I did not go to the emergency room. I didn't go to the doctor for a couple of days. I could have bled out. And I'm a speech therapist, and I had been working with people who had had traumatic brain injuries. There were a few celebrities who had just had a little head injury on a ski trip, and then you hear about them dying the next day. Thank God that didn't happen to me, and I don't want that to happen to you. But I want you to start thinking about yourself a little bit more. Now, if you resonate with my message, if you are 40 and over, if you're like, shit, is this my life? This is the job I've been doing for 20 something years. You know, shit, is this my relationship? We're kind of in autopilot right now. Like, yeah, I know I'm committed to this relationship, but can it be better? Oh, they tell me that, you just have to settle for it. But when you start having these dialogues with yourself, that's a signal that you could be burning out. But you don't have to stay that way. You don't have to have the physical injury to show you that you're burned out. You can say to yourself, hey, you know what? I've had enough. I've had enough. I need to make a change. You can acknowledge to yourself, hey, I don't really like this job anymore. I'm not happy working here. You can, create the courage within yourself to make a drastic shift and say, you know what? I've always had this dream that I wanted to do this kind of work, and maybe I should start my own business. Yeah, I'm all about entrepreneurship. Once I stopped working for the school system and I started working for myself, I got a taste of what it feels like to have time freedom. My time freedom went away because I started adding on and taking every single child that was coming in and building up my week, so I had no time to myself. But I did get that sense and that taste of time freedom and just glimpses of financial freedom as well. So I want you to actually start reflecting and ask yourself, are you burned out? Because it's okay to acknowledge that you are. It is possible that you are burned out and you are just going through the motions. And that's why you feel miserable. Or that's why you flare up at the slightest trigger. That's why you just feel unsatisfied and unhappy, and you're looking externally to fix that. It could be this sense of inner burnout in that you don't even know how to slow down because you've been in autopilot for as far back as you can remember. I've been working since I was 14. In high school, I worked at our local dentist's office and started with a couple of hours a week, and then I was going every day. By the time I graduated, went to college, worked in college, and so that's been since 14. Why can't we slow down? Why is it that we have to keep going, or tell ourselves that, you know what, you just got a few more years until you get retirement in the pocket, until you're 65. I'm going to be 50 this year in a couple of months. And this burnout started about 5 years ago. Probably, like I said, it started when I first started the career because of the situation that I put myself in, and the work environment that I put myself in. But let's just say 40, that I started to recognize that I'm burned out from everything, that I would have to wait until 25 more years before I gave myself permission to do something about it. That's a bunch of bullshit. So I want you to really consider and ask yourself, and I'm saying the same thing over and over again in this video. If you hear something plenty of times, it will actually start to register. Ask yourself, are you burned out? And if you get a yes, if you've got this inherent feeling that, yeah, I am burned out, ask yourself, where in your life are you burned out? Are you burned out from work? And maybe it's not the exact job that's burning you out, but it's the work that you're doing. Are you burned out from your career and what you've chosen to do? Do you need a change? Do you want to go from working in a bank to being an artist? Are you burned out on your relationship? Now, it doesn't mean your relationship has to end, but things can change so that you actually feel lifted and alive when you're with your partner. Maybe it means a conversation that, hey, something needs to change. If you're not being heard or you're being dismissed, that's a whole other episode. We can go into that in another time. You burned out on, are you burned out on worrying about money? That's a thing too. And we can go into the energetics around money. Are you just burned out because you're tired, you have no energy, you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, you just feel lost? Ask yourself, are you burned out? And you don't have to stay there. If you are feeling burned out, and it feels safe for you to share in the comments where you're burned out in your life. What change are you looking for? Where are you saying to yourself, I've had enough. Somebody help me. That's where I was. Luckily, I had a lot of people come out in the online space when I was just crying out in my head saying, I need help. I can't stay here anymore. I can't. So drop in the comments or reach out to me. My contact information is in the description of my channel. Reach out to me in email. And yeah, just know that you're not alone. And burnout is real.